Hey, my name is Alex Vanover from the DIY Alex YouTube channel. But here on the Crafty.net channel, I'm going to teach you how to sublimate coasters just like these. If you're new to sublimation, coasters are a great introductory project so you can get more comfortable moving on to more advanced sublimation techniques. Now let's get crafty. So in order to begin our sublimation coasters, we're going to start on our very favorite file website, crafty.net. And to begin, I'm going to start by looking through the categories. I know I want to put some phrases on my coaster, so I think I'm going to begin in phrases and designs. Then, of course, I have lots of categories to choose from, and I think I want to put these in my office for a little bit of inspiration when I need it. So I'm going to choose the inspirational good vibes subcategory, and then I have lots of items to choose from, but I want to be sure that these do coordinate and they look good together. So for example, if you wanted to do 4 of like these black and white images, you could do that. But since we're doing sublimation, I like to add a little bit of color into my designs. So let's go to the next page and see what we can find. Ooh, I see at least a couple of these designs that have this fun, like colorful outline of a word. And if I can find a 4th one, I think this is the set I'm going to choose for my coasters. And here's another one. So since I know I want to use this design as well as these 4, I'm going to go into each of them individually, and I'm going to be printing these as sublimation designs, which means I want to download the PNG file type. That is my first choice for when I'm going to use it in Cricut Design Space. So I'll choose the PNG file type and then I'll click download. Then I'll go back into the category and just repeat that for all the other designs. And I love when you download each of the direct file types because that means I don't have to spend time unzipping each file. So I absolutely love that feature in crafty.net. So then I'm going to minimize crafty.net and go into Cricut Design Space. I'm going to be using Cricut Design Space for this project because I want to make sure that I can size these designs for the exact size of my coaster. So to upload my designs, I'm going to go into the lower left-hand corner of Design Space and choose Upload, and then click the white Upload Image button, and then Browse. And I'll find all of my file types here in my downloads. So I'll just insert one at a time. And then I want to make sure that I save each of these as a print then cut image. This is going to allow me to print it out as a sublimation image instead of as a cut image. Then I'll choose upload, and we'll just follow that same process for all the others. I always like to choose complex when I upload a PNG type file that I'm going to be using as print then cut. I just always have the best luck with that. So that's how I like to upload each and every image. And I love this set because I think that it's gonna look so good together on all 4 coasters. They have 4 different sayings, but they all coordinate, and that's my favorite way to make projects like this. So now that we have all 4 of them uploaded into Design Space, I'm just going to click and select each one of them. And I know that it's selected because it has this green border all the way around it. And then I'll click the green Add to Canvas button. Next, I need to make everything quite a bit smaller. So I'm just gonna go up to the edit bar while everything is still selected and make everything about 5 inches wide because we're gonna resize everything in a moment anyway. Now, I need to make sure that I size each of my designs to fit on my coasters. So I'm gonna create a bit of a template for myself by going into the Basic Shapes panel on the left-hand side of the screen. And then I'm gonna choose the rounded corners right here because this is the exact shape of my coaster. So I'm going to click on that and insert it into my canvas. And then I want to resize it to fit the size of my coaster. So I'm going to change the width to 3.875 inches and then press enter. So now I can utilize this to size each of my images, but I actually am going to change the color to white just to make it a bit easier to see everything. Then I'll just place each of my images on top. But do you see how that ends up going behind the coaster? That's because the coaster is on the top of the layers panel. So in order to view everything on top of the coaster, I'm going to click on the layer that contains the coaster template, and I'm going to click and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel and then let my mouse go. So now I can view everything on top of it. Then with the template as the model, I'm just going to use the arrows in the lower right-hand corner to decrease the size until they fit on each coaster the way that I want them to. And I definitely want it to go almost to the sides of each coaster, but I do want to leave a little bit of margin here on the sides so that it doesn't look like it's going edge to edge. So once I have this one sized, I'll scoot it out of the way. And then I'll just follow the same process with all of the other sayings. And in fact, one way I could make this a little bit faster is I could take the width of this image right here that we've already sized, and then I can just copy and paste that into the width of all the other images so that they're exactly the same regardless of their height. So once I've changed that height up here in the edit bar, then I can see that it's going to have the exact same margins on the sides. And I still may check these images on the coaster itself, because sometimes it can make it look a little bit small. Then I'll just repeat that process for the exact same image. I'll go ahead and place it over top the template so I can see what it looks like. But I'm going to go up to the edit bar and go under the width. I'm going to remove the width that it originally has, and I'm going to paste in the width from the You Are Enough image, and then press enter, so that I know it's the same size, but this way that I know it still looks good on the coaster itself. It doesn't look a little bit too short. Then once I'm happy with all of my images, next I need to go ahead and get rid of this template because I already have the coasters to sublimate on, so I don't need to print or cut the template out. So in order to do that, I want to leave it in my project, but I don't want to print it. So I'm going to go over to the layers panel and click on this eyeball here on the right hand side. And that's going to hide my coaster, but still leave it in this project, so that if I ever want to come back and create different coasters and use the same template, it's still available in my project. I can always bring it back anytime by just clicking on the eyeball button. Once I have everything ready to go, I'll save my project. I'll save this as Sublimation Coasters and then click Save. Then we'll go ahead and proceed through the project by clicking the green Make It button. And now I see that these are a little bit close together, and I am going to have to trim these using scissors. So I am going to drag these images out a little bit and give myself a little bit more space in between each one. And I can always do that here on the prep screen. You'll see that the registration mark that Design Space automatically adds to every print and cut project will just expand to fit where I've just placed my image. And now I have a little bit more space in between everything, so I'm not concerned about accidentally cutting off any parts of my design. The other thing I need to do on this screen is to click the mirror button, because you may already know that with every sublimation project, you always want to mirror before you print your image. Then I'll click the green Continue button. And once my Maker 3 connects to my machine, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the printer settings. So I'm gonna click the green Send to Printer button. And just as a reminder, whenever we use Design Space as a tool for printing sublimation designs, we're not actually going to have the Cricut cut out anything. So we don't actually need to involve the Cricut. We're just using Design Space for its printing capabilities and the ability to size everything precisely. So the settings that I like to use in Cricut Design Space for sublimation are: I like to turn off the bleed because we're not going to be cutting it on the machine. And then I always like to click the Use System Dialog button. And when I go down to click the green Print button, we're not actually printing just yet. It's actually just going to pop up the System Dialog box. So the first thing I need to do is choose the printer that I'm going to be using. And I'm going to choose my Epson ST4000 because that's what I want to print. That is one of my sublimation printers. So make sure that you're printing on a sublimation printer here. Then you can choose the Preferences button to open up and expand a few more settings. One thing I like to do is change my paper type from plain paper to Premium Presentation Paper Matte. I always get really good results with my sublimation paper when I choose that as my paper type. Then the other setting I'm going to choose is change the quality from standard to high to make sure that our print is nice and highly pigmented. Then I'll choose OK, and I'll hop over to my printer and add sublimation paper into it. And once I'm ready, I'll come back into Design Space and press Print. And then when you're ready to print your project, ensure that your sublimation printer has sublimation paper loaded into it. Then confirm any settings on your printer, and you can go back to your computer and press Print. Once your designs are printed in Design Space, the next step is to remove this registration mark by cutting it off and then cutting all 4 of our designs apart. Cricut Design Space always puts this black registration mark all the way around everything, just in case you're going to cut it using the Cricut. But since we are not using the Cricut in this project, we can go ahead and cut that off because we're not going to use it. Now, you're more than welcome to trim your designs apart just using a pair of scissors, but I like to use a paper trimmer to get nice, clean, straight lines. So I'll just line it up over top of the paper trimmer line. And I'll get a little closer to my design, and I'll go ahead and cut off those registration marks. And now that the registration marks are gone, I'll just cut each design apart so that I can tape it on each coaster. So our next step is to prepare the coasters for sublimation. And some people like to use a lint roller to clean off any dust or dirt left over on the coasters, but I find that it's really sticky and that's really hard to do. So instead, I'm gonna use a lint-free cloth, and I'm just gonna wipe down each of my coasters before taping the sublimation designs to them. And after I wipe them down, I'm only going to hold them by the sides so that I don't add any dirt or fingerprints back onto the coasters. And now that that's done, we can use some heat-resistant tape to tape our designs with the ink side down on our coasters. This is why we mirrored them before we printed them, so that we can place them and they'll be correct reading by the time they are sublimated. So again, just make sure that ink side is facing down on the coaster. And it might be a bit hard to see in the camera, but I can see the design through the paper. So that makes lining it up a little bit easier. Then I'll just add some heat resistant tape to both the top and the bottom of my design. Also be cautious as you are taping your designs onto the coasters, because you may not have cut your paper totally evenly on each side. So make sure the design itself is lined up on the coaster, and the paper may look a little bit uneven, but of course, once we remove the paper, you'll be able to tell if you don't do this correctly. And once everything is taped in place, now we're ready to start sublimating. The first step that I took was I preheated my heat press to 400 degrees for 40 seconds. Now I got that recommendation from the 143 Vinyl product listing for these coasters, so that's where I got the time and temperature from. Now in order to protect my heat press from any blowout from the sublimation ink, I'm going to sandwich all of my coasters in a large sheet of butcher paper. So in order to set that up, first I'll swing away the top half of my heat press. Then I'll cut a large piece of butcher paper that's about twice as big as I actually need it. Then I'll fold my butcher paper in half and place it on my heat press. Then I'm just gonna place each of my coasters inside that little sandwich with the ink side facing up towards the top of the heat press. So like I said, this is gonna protect the top of the heat press from any blowout that might occur during the sublimation process. Then once all of my coasters are safely in place, I'll lower down my heat press and allow it to sublimate. Then once the time is up, of course, I'll raise the lid on my heat press. And before I touch any of my coasters, I'm going to allow them to cool for just a moment before I pull them off the heat press. Then I'll just kind of pull the whole butcher paper sandwich off of the bottom pattern and open up the butcher paper to see how they look. Then I'm gonna let them cool for another couple of minutes, and then I'll use a pair of stab and grab tweezers to pull the sublimation paper and tape off of my coasters. I'm always so impatient, but I also don't want to burn myself. I'm excited to see how they look. Check out how this one turned out. So bright and vivid, I absolutely love it. Now, let's see what the others look like. You guys, check out how amazing these sublimation coasters turned out. I just absolutely love how bright and vivid sublimation ink gets after it's pressed onto a polyester sublimation blank. What do you guys think of these coasters? Let me know down in the comments. If you're new to the CRAFTY.net YouTube channel, I'd love it if you consider subscribing, because we are bringing you new craft tutorials every single week on this channel, and I really wouldn't want you to miss out. If you learned something in this video, then be sure to give it a like, and comment below if you want to see more sublimation tutorials here on the CRAFTY.net YouTube channel. Stay crafty.